Hello, Newberry. Welcome to our second edition of Charter Chats. I've got Commissioner Tim Marden with me here today, and of course I'm your Mayor, Jordan Marlowe. We've got the PowerPoint in front of us that was presented to the Newberry City Commission, and we would encourage you to go to the city's website, download the charter, follow along with us as we go through these changes so that you can make an informed decision when you go to vote on August the 18th. It's been about 11 years since we've amended our charter. So about 18 months ago, we commissioned, the Newberry City Commission, commissioned a board of 11 people to dig deep into our charter, to go through it, offer up changes, and bring those changes back to the Newberry Commission, who then went through the charter and accepted their proposals to give to you to vote on August the 18th. So welcome, Commissioner Marden. Thank you for giving up your time to go through the proposals with the residents of Newberry.
Sure.
And tell us a little bit about your thoughts going through this process.
Well, there's always an opportunity to self-critique. We talk about that a lot, and I think it is a very proactive approach that our city commission takes. So the charter is sort of like our city's constitution. You know, the country has a constitution. It sets out at the 100,000 foot level what kind of form of government we're going to have and some of the nuts and bolts of that. It's the laws and the ordinances that we'll go into, the resolutions that really talk and speak to how that vision of the charter comes into fruition and how it's actually carried out. So when we first started having this discussion, it was about, you know, let's bring it up to date as far as technology goes. If I remember, there was a reference in there about a fax, but nobody has a fax anymore. So just different little things like that. And I really relish the opportunity to really just kind of turn this over to the Charter Review Commission, which was made up of citizens like you. This was not done by the City Commission. It wasn't done by the mayor. It was done by a group of volunteers. They just had the directive from the commission to do these sorts of things and clean it up and make sure that we don't have a lot of duplicative language. And my hat's off to them. They did a fantastic job.
And that really was about the only marching orders that the commission gave to the charter review team, was approach it like the Constitution. Make sure that our charter has broad strokes of these are the powers, but don't put the nitty-gritty into the charter. We need those things in ordinances, resolutions, things that can be altered more fluidly. So with that, we're going to just jump right in. If you've got your charter provisions printed off in front of you, you'll notice that in Article 1, which is general provisions, it goes over the preamble, things like the city seal, jurisdictions. We didn't offer any changes there, so I'm going to skip right over that. If you look at Article 2, which is powers of the city, that language pretty much comes from the state. There wasn't much change there. We took out an and, that kind of a thing. So I'm going to skip right over that. The only thing I will note in Article 2 is that you'll see our first time where we say state law reference. And again, the idea there is to make sure that if the state has already mandated something, the state has already said this is our purview, the city of Newberry is not looking to get into an argument or a fight there. So we just say state law reference, and then you'll just go and see the state law. Article 3 is where you get to our first significant changes. And Article 3 covers the powers of the mayor. The first thing you'll see there, and again, I'd reference you back to the very first video in this series, is a clear delineation that we are a commission city manager form of government. You know, 21 years ago, when the last time they changed the charter, it was to pull Newberry out of a mayor strong form of government where the mayor really was a city manager and each commissioner took a department. The charter that we have now sort of has one foot in the old world and one foot in the new world, and we're trying to bring everything clearly into the new world. So right off the bat, we're going to try to keep that language and say the city commission runs the city, but the manager, the city commission sets the policy. The manager actually is in charge of the operation and running of the city. Any thoughts there?
Well, what I was thinking actually was just how interesting it is. We're over a 100-year-old city, founded in 1895, but we still try to stay on the cutting edge. And the fact that we have been able to change with the times, the fact that we have been able to absorb some of these updates and that sort of thing in a very proactive way, I think says a lot about the city at large. And I just love seeing these kinds of things because when it was smaller, when the city was smaller, we did have that sort of government. That's a great historical reference, but we are willing to move as we need to, and the flexibility to be able to do that is super encouraging.
Absolutely. I've always been impressed with Newberry's ability to stay on the cutting edge. I think that the next change that you're going to see there that people may have some feelings about, here at Newberry, we've always sworn in our elected people the very next day. So we have our elections on Tuesday and we swear in our new commissioners on Wednesday.
Yep.
Now there's some problems with state law that says it has to be 10 days after, and we have changed our charter to adhere to state law. What are your thoughts on that? We're proposing changing our charter to adhere to state law.
True, proposing is important. It does have to be passed, and really, we had an opportunity here to recognize that. Yes, it's a tradition of Newberry to do that, a really nice tradition, but it has provided a little bit of a challenge because if you win on Tuesday, you may not find out until 9 o'clock at night. And to potentially try to scramble to get distant relative to a ceremony on the following day at noon can be a little bit of a headache for some people, so this just does give a little bit of flexibility for that. So I think it's a welcome change from my perspective. You may disagree.
The next significant change in Article 3. Currently, our charter has a provision for the commission to impeach the mayor. And it talks about things like, public drunkenness and those kinds of things. There is no provision for the mayor to impeach a commissioner. Now there are state laws that govern the removal of elected office. We have currently the potential to do recalls. We have a procedure and things like that. But we are significantly proposing a change here in Article 3 by removing that. Tell the folks a little bit of how you feel about that change, that proposal.
I think I'm relatively indifferent, other than the fact that I think it does sort of reset the table to kind of get everybody playing by the same rules.
And my memory of the Charter Commission's conversation here was that if we're trying to keep the language uniform, if we're trying to keep the powers uniform, then we should remove that out. Again, you are free and welcome to disagree with that, but that was the thinking. I think that we had some conversations with our legal team about, what are the problems with one group of elected people removing another elected person, which is the reason why the commission doesn't have the power to impeach another commissioner, or the reason why a mayor doesn't have the power to impeach. We felt as a group, that body did, that we should leave that with the voters and not muddy the waters, so to say.
Well, while we may be very happy with the commission that we have right now, it's not incumbent upon us to tie the hands of a future commission. Much like, the power of impeachment, we don't want a disgruntled commissioner who may have been friends with somebody being able to undo an election. So this does keep the authority, so to speak, with the citizen and not seat it with any one particular individual.
That's an excellent point. The citizens always have the power for recall. We've struck out B, we've struck out C. A lot of the language that is being suggested to be removed from Article 3, it's either redundant, it doesn't fall in line with the manager form of government, or we felt it's things that should inherently naturally occur, like saying that the mayor shall from time to time communicate with the commission. Clearly, the mayor, the commission
do that all the time.
are communicating.
We do that all the time.
So we're just trying to make sure that we don't fill up and clutter up the charter with a lot of unnecessary language. One important change in Article 3 adheres to that concept of back in the day when the mayor actually ran the city. In our current charter, it's very confusing. Some places it says the mayor's in charge in a state of emergency. Other places it says the manager's in charge in a state of emergency. It gives the mayor power over the police department, where the city manager is in charge of everything else. Now Newberry doesn't have a police department, so it was an interesting addition when they put that in years ago. But we may have a police department at some point in the future, and do we really want the mayor being in charge of that one aspect of the city? So the Charter Review Commission decided we just needed to clean that language up by making it clear who's in charge of what, and putting everything under the manager. And certainly the commission is the only body that can declare a state of emergency. So, do you have any thoughts about that change?
Well, I think it just speaks a little bit towards really what the purpose of the commission is versus what the purpose of the city manager is. The commission is tasked with setting the course. The city manager, or the CEO, so to speak, of the city is the person in charge with executing that vision. So I know a lot of citizens, and they'll call the city commissioner to try to get something done on their road, or to try to get something done about a tree, or something very functional. And I know for myself, I have tried to turn them back to the city, and that's not so much to say I don't, deal with that, or that's not my job. It's just being able to correctly get the problem in the hands of the person who can do the problem solving. So just like a corporation has a board of people, they're not the ones who are cutting payroll checks. They're not the ones who are assigning work orders and that sort of thing, and executing. That's the city manager's responsibility. We hire the city manager to execute our vision. The staff is hired by the city manager to further execute that vision. So those are the folks who actually are the ones that are doing the heavy lifting. We set the course. We're kind of looking out into the future of what we potentially see, and just kind of set that direction. And it's the city manager that's really steering the ship, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of wraps up the significant changes in Article 3. When you move to Article 4, we get into the City Commission, and right off the bat, you'll see that 10-day after election period proposal mirrored exactly the same language as it was before in Article 3. And you're going to see a lot of strikeouts in Article 4 covering the commission. Some things seem to be better in a different article, and some things were preempted by state law. So as we get into Article 4, one thing that we did not propose to change, but maybe of interest to you, and I know that Commissioner Marden had some thoughts on it, was keeping you have to be 21 years of age in order to run for office in the city of Newberry. There was robust conversation on the Charter Review Board. There was some robust conversation on the Newberry Commission about this part, but in the end, we left it at 21 years of age. What are your thoughts on that?
This was actually something that I personally had disagreed with. I thought that there were plenty of capable 18-year-olds within the city that could serve as a city commissioner. It did kind of more make it in line with things that you think about with regards to the age of majority and different little freedoms that we talk about from time to time. But it was the will of the commission. I cede to that vote that we do leave it at 21, and if I remember right, the majority of that conversation centered around sort of the maturity level.
You'll see some language there that appoints the commission as the elected body that governs elections. That language has been removed. Supervisor of election governs that, again, under state law. So some of that has been moved to a different article. Some of that has been ceded over to the supervisor of elections. And then you'll see that we have cleaned up and changed some language about the types of meetings that the commission can have. So you'll see an awful lot of strikeouts because we just reworded it, but you'll still see it in Article 4. And there are some important changes here to think about. If you're following along with us in Article 4, covering the City Commission, I'd point you to the new Section 16 Commission meetings. The first thing, change that I'd like to discuss is under B, special meetings. In our current charter, the mayor has the authority to call a special meeting right off the bat, unilaterally. The manager has the authority to call a meeting unilaterally, but it takes 2 commissioners to call a special meeting. And that has the potential to create a sunshine violations. If you're not familiar with the sunshine laws here in Florida, if you're an elected voting official, you may not speak with another elected voting official on the same board about anything that you could potentially ever have to vote about. So to ask a city commissioner to have to call up another city commissioner and discuss having a meeting, a special meeting, while itself isn't technically a violation, certainly opened the doors for some problematic situations. So under the proposed charter, the manager can call a meeting, the mayor can call a meeting, and any one commissioner has the authority to call a special meeting. Any thoughts or reactions to that proposal?
Well, here's how a call could potentially play out. Hi, Commissioner, this is Commissioner Marden. I want to call a special meeting because I'm not happy with X. And boom, right there you have the predisposition from one commissioner to the other about something that they are unhappy with. So the natural progression from there is they're going to vote against that or they're going to vote for that, and that's what we kind of want to avoid. I think the addition of some of these meetings just puts more tools in the toolbox for the commission, for future commissions, to be able to have different things that apply for different situations. And you and I know that different things come up, whether it's physicality, timeliness, or like you just said, who can actually call a meeting. And I think those sorts of things are important. This is a very good section. This is a very good update, and I'm fully in favor of this area.
I agree, and one of those tools in that toolbox is a new addition to this section that's not in our current charter, and we're calling them conference session meetings. And the idea here is that sometimes the commission needs to meet in a place other than City Hall chambers. Sometimes think of the construction of Champions Park, for instance, where we have things that we need to discuss, and it would simply be easier to be on site for our staff, our contractor, to be able to point out what it is we're being asked to make decisions on. So the proposed charter has the opportunity for the commission under a conference session meeting to meet at a different location, but there's a very important caveat. No action can be decided there. So the commission can meet and get educated. The commission can meet and ask questions, but they can't have a motion, they can't take a vote. So I think that is one of the things that adds to that toolbox that Commissioner Marden was referencing.
My key takeaway here is transparency and the opportunity to go physically to a place, see something in 3D. You may have to see the lighting. You may have to see how it relates to the surroundings. I think that's a very powerful option that the City Commission needs, and why I'm in favor of that particular provision. And then also, I think hopefully encapsulates things that we haven't even necessarily thought of. We've talked about the Ag Tech Park. Well, if there's a particular sort of dynamic out there that comes up in 3 years or 5 years, and maybe none of us are even here, they still have the option to go out there and physically see what it is in real time. And I think that is a very, very, very powerful tool.
Absolutely. And that's going to take us to Article 5, which covers ordinances and resolutions. And here's where we get into the types of laws that the commission can pass. As you'll see in Article 5, Section 18A, an ordinance is an official legislative action. That's our highest law that the commission can pass. It's got the most details in it. A resolution, which is under B, is an expression of the City Commission. That's talking more about policies that the City Commission would like to see enacted. An ordinance has to be read twice. That means that at 2 publicly advertised meetings, plenty of opportunity for citizens to engage and have the opportunity to have their concerns heard. A resolution can be voted on just one time. So in Article 5, it's going to outline what articles or what ordinances and resolutions are, how they're going to be enacted. It's going to give some language. I would say for me, the big takeaway from Article 5 is, again, removal of things that should never have potentially been in the charter anyway. You're going to see an awful lot, a large section about bonds. And we couldn't find any historical reason why we would put bond ordinances into the charter when no other ordinances are in the charter. So you'll see those sections are just being suggested to be removed. They will still be governed by ordinance, but the commission can change an ordinance after 2 readings. We can only change our charter after going through this huge process. And when it comes to bonds, those things are very fluid at the state and federal level. So it really tied our hands, that tied the city's hands an awful lot. So that's the suggestion there. Thoughts on removing bonds out of the charter, Commissioner Marden?
I think it's just a ability to increase flexibility for the commission. Goodness, I mean, look at how often the Fed changes the interest rates, for instance, which affect bond rates and what the cost to borrow money is. That just seems like a flowing change continually. So just flexibility is my takeaway there.
The other thing I would point residents to, the other change I would point residents to in Article 5 that I'm completely in favor of and would support. Currently, our charter gives the mayor the veto power. It's a strange veto power. It's kind of a weak veto power. But if the commission votes on an ordinance, votes on a resolution, and the mayor decides not to sign it, it is in effect vetoed until the commission can come back and vote again on it. And it compels the commission to come back and vote again on it. Now, under those sunshine laws that we just discussed, that's problematic because the mayor in the city of Newberry is a non-voting elected official, which means that the mayor can speak to commissioners about things that are going to come up for a vote. The mayor can be a sounding board for commissioners. But when you couple that veto power, that made that problematic because in essence that is a vote. It's saying these 5 people who just voted, I'm going to take away their vote with my vote or with my non-stroke of the pen. So the current charter strips the mayor of that power. Again, I'm in favor of it. What do you think, Commissioner Marden?
I think it really is just a check and balance mechanism within the city to make sure that nobody can completely co-opt an initiative, a vote, a designation, a resolution, any of those sorts of things.
And you're going to see, again, if you're following along, most of the rest of Article 5 is just strikeouts. There are things that are regulated at the state level. We've moved it to another part of the article, or we just don't think that it's charter worthy under the commission's marching orders of keep the charter at the 100,000 foot level and make sure that we're not cluttering the charter with things that should be in other places. And you'll see, yep, it's all the rest are strikeouts until we get to Article 6, which are executive officers. Now, under our city manager form of government, there are really only 3 offices that work for the commission directly. The commission hires the city manager, the city clerk, and the legal team. Everyone else in the city works for the city manager. So under Article 6, we really go over each of those executive offices and what we expect of them. Now, if you look at the current charter, you're going to see, again, a whole lot more language. The charter review team really felt like we should keep it to the powers and responsibilities of each of those executive officers, and that's the guiding principle here. The first thing I'd like to get your thoughts on, Commissioner Marden, at the commission, the review commission spent a lot of time on, was allowing the commission to hire a city manager who doesn't live in the city of Newberry. Currently, our charter stipulates that the city manager has to live in the city of Newberry. Now, they mitigated that by making it a supermajority vote to allow someone who doesn't live in the city of Newberry. But how do you feel about giving the commission that flexibility?
Well, I think if you think about a potential for a great candidate who maybe lives a mile outside the city and seems to be the best fit for the city manager position, it just gives the commission a little bit of flexibility to not mandate that city manager move a mile or potentially across the street. You mentioned in the past how Newberry isn't a perfect, a perfect territory. We have what are called enclaves and islands and things like that. So there are properties that are not designated in the city, but they are within the boundary of the city. So, I would hate to think that we uproot a family over such a small, trivial opportunity, and just, having some flexibility is key to be able to make a common sense decision, I guess is really what I'm trying to say.
So Article 6, which is executive officers, you're going to see that in Article 6, there's really only 3 people that work directly for the Newberry City Commission. That is the city manager, the city clerk, and our legal team. Everybody else works for the city manager. So as you dig into Article 6, I would bring your attention to the first proposed change that folks may be uncomfortable with, is the proposed charter is giving the commission, under a supermajority situation, the ability to hire a city manager that doesn't live in the city of Newberry. Can you tell folks a little bit about your thoughts on that?
I think this empowers the city commission to make a little bit more common sense decision when it comes to the city manager position. We could have a fantastic candidate that maybe just lives a mile outside the city. Well, it just doesn't seem to make sense for them to potentially lose, we have Save Our Homes. If you stay in your home, you have a maximum of 3%. Well, as soon as you move, you lose that. So it just adds to the conversation. It certainly isn't an end-all be-all because there is the split of the vote, but it does help give the city commission a little bit of flexibility.
And that really, I think, was what the charter review team was thinking about. They were thinking about maybe a citizen who lives in an enclave here in the city, but for whatever reason they can't annex in.
Very true.
No one was envisioning here someone who lives in Georgia managing the city of Newberry, which is why it requires that supermajority vote. The rest of the manager part of Article 6, I think, is fairly in line with what the language that you would see in a job description of and how we go about hiring. And then we get to the powers of a city manager, and you're going to see that mainly we struck through things that we thought were more of a job description. Exercise, control, direct, and supervise all activities of municipal government. Well, we've already said the city manager is responsible to the city commission for the management of all city affairs. So how many ways can you say the same thing? So we're trying to get the language in, leave it as concise as possible, and move on. And then we get to I think I missed the city clerk. Or maybe we do legal first. Then you get into the attorney. I would say the attorney out of the executive officers had the least amount of proposed changes. Of course, the city, at this point in time, we don't have our own internal legal team. We contract with a firm outside, and so that didn't, nothing changed too much there. And then, of course, we get to the city clerk. The city clerk is appointed by the city commission, and is responsible for performing the following duties. And we really wanted to make sure that we kept it to responsibilities, duties, and the powers. So you're not going to see an awful lot of changes there. We have put into this charter that the city clerk is responsible for running our municipal elections, which was not in the current charter, but it's certainly a task that our city clerk by tradition has done.
Judy Rice is our current city clerk, and she does a fantastic job with that. One of the other big things that she does is the freedom of information requests that come through, and it's very important to have somebody dedicated to some of those very specific tasks. So I'm glad that we've outlined that and formalized that here within the charter.
I'd say the only other addition here that residents may have pointed out of them, in the proposed charter, we have language that says it's new item F. It says shall consult with the city manager to provide input on the budgetary needs of the city clerk for purposes of the annual budget. Under our form of government, the city manager is responsible for the city's budget. So the city manager has to present to the Newberry Commission and say, here's the budget, here's what we're going to spend, and certainly the city clerk's office falls under that budget. But the city clerk is a separate executive officer. So the city clerk and the city manager are on parallel tracks. One's not subordinate to the other. So that inclusion is an attempt to say these two offices have to work together on the budget, but one is not subordinate to the other. Any thoughts on that, Commissioner?
That's probably pretty easy to get a little more inside baseball on, but I think it is important in the charter to make it much more easy to read for the passerby. I don't want folks, and I don't think any of us want folks that have to have a PhD in government to understand this charter or understand kind of the nuts and bolts of it. We want it to be friendly to a casual reader as much as possible. And one of the big things was just being able to scale down the length of this thing. We have brought it down. It's actually only 11 printed pages, the proposed charter, when you print it out, where I believe in the past it was as much as 25 pages, so we're well over half of what that used to be.
And that really covers the bulk of the changes in the proposed charter. Article 7 covers city elections. There's not a lot there that is different. Again, same principle, scaling down, pushing things that are governed by the supervisor election or the state to the appropriate levels. There is an interim government addition in Article 7, so that actually covers the idea if the entire city commission and mayor are all wiped out, what happens?
Doomsday.
It's the doomsday provision. So we didn't have that provision in our current charter. Now we do conceive of a time where everyone is gone. Article 9 is general clauses. Again, mostly simply strikeouts. Things that we've moved to other areas of our charter have been governed by state law. So that takes us to the end of our first charter chat with Commissioner Marden. I hope you guys have learned a lot. I hope this has been helpful in helping you make the decisions. I know that some of you may literally have your mail-in ballot sitting in front of you right now and have been waiting for some kind of a conversation to help you understand the reasons we did this. Closing thoughts, Commissioner?
There's certainly questions that may come up after you've watched this video or after you've talked to your friends. I don't know any commissioner who is not available to ask follow-up. Of course, the mayor is always available as well. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us by phone, by email, or if you see us out and about, we're always available. It's our opportunity and it's our humble service to you to absolutely answer these questions.
Well said, sir. Thank you, Newberry. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you for round 3 of Charter Chats with Commissioner Rick Coleman. It's coming to you.